Welcome to the Southeast Retirement Planners Podcast, where we will go beyond the balance sheet with our guests, not only to share from our personal experience as financial advisors of over 25 plus years, but also to learn from our guests about the issues and topics that are important to them. Our firm specializes in taking care of the financial plans for individuals and small businesses by helping our clients identify their individual goals and taking a conservative and ongoing approach to helping accomplish them. We are located in Hickory, North Carolina, and look forward to continuing to serve our clients and our community. Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode.
Hello and welcome to the Southeast Retirement Planners Podcast. I'm Ryan Edwards. I'm here today with Bob Fincher. He's joined us as well. He's normally the host sometimes, and sometimes he's the co-host. So we're happy to start off today as we share some information on a new designation that Bob has. But before we get started, I want to just make you aware of our website and how you can contact us. You can find us at sereplaners.com, and there on the website you can also find our past podcast episodes as well as this one whenever we get it all kicked out. So we're glad to have you join us today, and we look forward to sharing some information on Bob's new designation. Hey, let's just jump right in because I'm pretty pumped about the designation that you received, and kind of give me an idea of what kind of led you to pursue that designation. I mean, we've been in the business for a number of years and ran across a number of different clients, and business owners make up a big part of that. But is that what helped lead you?
Yeah, I mean, part of it is, as you know, we work with individuals and business, some of whom are business owners. We work with some businesses as well through corporate plans and things like that. And over the last few years, I've just found more of a connection with business owners and how do we provide value? How do they use the value and monetize the thing that they've been investing their life's work into for so many years? So you end up, and in our world, it's generally kind of small business owners and things like that. But you know, they've been pouring their life into this thing, and generally, statistically, we know that about 80% of their net worth is in their business. Right. And as an advisor, we always want to give the best advice, the most sound advice we can in terms of transitioning through these different seasons of life. And over the past few years, I ran into some challenges working with business owners where does the rubber meet the road? We can talk about how important the business is, and we can manage the transaction after the fact if they were to sell their business, if they retire or whatever. But I didn't know really how to gain an expertise in that area. And so I started looking for different avenues, different ways to do that, whether it was trying to go from like an accounting side of things and doing valuations and helping people, or even a marketing side of things of helping people actually broker their business. And none of those things seem to really be in alignment with the kind of work that we do. So I ended up finding this designation, a certified exit planning advisor designation, and went back to school, started studying up on that, and was able to get that designation this past fall.
That's great. Okay, so I know that we talk with individuals and business owners or whoever it may be, and there is certainly some things that cross over, if you will, there's always some crossover.
Sure.
You know, you still want to make sure we identify specific areas for each client that are broad, and then some of them are very particular. But tell me how this skill will kind of complement what we're already providing to clients.
Well, let me back up and give you an idea of what the framework of this designation is. Really, it's learning how the entire process of exit planning might affect a business owner. Okay. One of the big misnomers with exit planning, and this is part of what really got me excited about going through this particular training. One of the big misnomers is exit planning is about retiring. It's about selling the business. It's about moving on. And a lot of business owners don't want to face that, and a lot of people don't want to have those conversations. But the reality is, the way this CEPA, the way you approach exit planning, it's really more business planning than it is exit planning. Because if I can sit down with you and talk to you about your business, and that there may be a point in time in the future where you want to sell your business, or you want to retire, or you want to move on and do something else, the best way to understand how to do that successfully is to grow your business between now and that point in time. So really, the methodology behind it is helping business owners understand that this is real business strategy, not just exit strategy. Right. So I think that makes a big difference.
Right, right. Well, just as we try to help individuals prepare for something in the future from an individual standpoint, that's the crossover. Is what I'm hearing you say. Is that you're in essence trying to make their business more valuable for them from that day, that point in time until when they do exit it officially.
Well, it's critical. I mean, if you think about it, again, have the conversation with a business owner. This is the thing that you've been putting so much of your time, effort, energy, and resources into. All right, so what do we do with that amount of net worth, with that particular entity? How do we do something with it? Well, you can decide today that you're going to walk away and your business is going to have some amount of value to some other person. It might be very little or it might be a whole lot, but that scale is dramatic. And so how do you even wrap your mind around what if I do, what if I don't, what if I'm thinking about it, what if I'm not sure? And then you can get into all of the issues as far as whether family's involved or you want to sell to a third party or the legal side of things. There's so many elements to it that are involved, but in general, it's just how do I help walk a client or a business owner through that process?
And you may have just answered that, but that's what I was going to. My next question was going to be, what exactly does it mean with that designation, the Certified Exit Planning Advisor? How does that differentiate you versus other advisors in our industry? And I think you were leading towards that. I mean, you're not just talking about one point in time. You're helping them through a whole process, and it's not always the financial perspective.
No. So, in terms of differentiation, having a CEPA, there are financial advisors who are CEPAs, there are CPAs who are CEPAs, there are attorneys who are CEPAs, there are business coaches and consultants who are CEPAs, and all of us would operate kind of under the same framework. So we would have kind of common language about how we want to see things work. We would have sort of a common timeline that we can share about how to make that business grow and when to create value in certain areas. And so the differentiation, there is, number one, there's kind of a network of individuals, professionals who all understand that methodology. So that's a real advantage for sure. Right. The other thing is, as a financial advisor, as a planner, we want to be able to not only use the transaction and protect the wealth of a transaction of someone selling their business, but we really want to help them maximize it prior to that point. Right. And so to me, and you and I both had experiences with this, where a client that we're working with calls us up and says, you know what, I'm going to sell my business. And as an advisor, you're like, okay, that's good. That's good for us. That's good for you, right? And then you're going to have a transaction and there's going to be some wealth created and there's going to be a wealth event there. And it's like, well, he might say, or she might say, now I need help protecting this. And what do we do for my legacy plans and that sort of stuff? And that's kind of where we come in as advisors. Well, this idea of thinking about it ahead of time and being a part of that exit planning process, to me, really kind of helps walk the client through that, where if they decided that just on their own, just looking at it saying, I'm 65 and I decided I needed to retire when I'm 65. Right. Well, they may not know that they could have spent another 18 months really working on their business, creating additional value, and it probably could have maybe doubled or even tripled that valuation and that transaction amount. Right. So helping them understand that is a big key.
That's key. Sometimes I found that business owners, what's the old saying, you can't see the forest for the trees. It needs someone to come in from the outside to provide that extra set of eyes, like what you're talking about.
That's right.
And it may not impact their timeline drastically, but it would be certainly worthwhile in that scenario you just mentioned. So that was one of the common challenges you touched on. But why, from your perspective, is this is it? It's not necessarily only winding down the business, right? I mean, we're talking selling it off to a family member potentially, or finding the right buyer within the same industry. I mean, this is something that you would walk through with individuals.
Yeah, and you can imagine I wouldn't necessarily know how to sell widgets and what the value of a business in the widget marketplace
Right.
is, right, for any given particular business. But knowing the questions to ask and putting the right team in place is part of the value. So when I talk about, well, let me back up before we get into the team in place. There's a terminology that business owners need to be aware of. It's the 5 Ds. Okay. And it's death, disability, divorce, distress, and disagreement. Okay. So those are the things. Those are the things you kind of want to avoid. Some of them you can avoid, some of them you cannot avoid, but you want to be able to make sure your business is prepared for any of those 5 Ds.
Right.
Obviously, if there was a sudden death by a business owner, then what happens to the business after that? And we've seen too many times where it just kind of goes away. Maybe they even have it beneficiary to a spouse who has no idea how to run the business and no interest in doing it. And all of a sudden, the business just kind of falls apart and it sort of goes away, and you've got employees to worry about and things like that. So I think that's obviously kind of a key one. Divorce would be relatively similar in some cases to that, right? And we've seen that happen. Distress would be, I don't know, if you look at just the marketplace, what happened with COVID. Are you prepared if you have a financial problem?
Correct.
If there's maybe an illness in your family that requires more of you, and all of a sudden you've got to be away from the business, or you don't have the resources to put back into the business. How is your business prepared for distresses, like financial distresses? Correct. And then obviously disability, and then disagreement among members of your business. And maybe if you have a partnership, you guys might not agree on the future or where you're headed with that particular business. And so if things split up, now you're dividing assets and you're dividing roles and responsibilities and maybe customers and all that kind of stuff. And that can be a problem. Right. So looking at the 5 Ds is a really important piece for business owners to be paying attention to. The other thing is, when you start pursuing this idea of exit planning, the thing that I would most like for people to know is it's business planning. It's not just exit planning. Mm-hmm. It's smart business. So think about the team you need to put together for an effective and an efficient exit planning team. And when you think about it this way, you need your business owner, who's your decision makers. You need a financial advisor that would consider how to manage the wealth the best way if there were to be a transition. You need attorneys, and that might be a family attorney if you have family involved. It might be somebody who's doing estate work for you, so you're going to need an attorney. You're going to need your CPA involved. And the other thing that I think a lot of business owners don't think about is potentially a business coach or consultant on that team. And so the way that I approach a business owner who's considering exit planning as part of their business, they need to be looking at who are those people that need to be involved in it. Right. And how can we help walk them through that?
So I guess when you're talking about a crossover, like I mentioned earlier, of how we interact with clients on a daily basis, individuals, maybe not business owners, we're really trying to serve as a quarterback or coordinator between the CPA, the attorney, various long-term care experts, and whereas we help coordinate those things. So what you just described, therein lies a definite crossover between what you do daily.
Absolutely.
And this. So this is and by you holding both hats as the financial advisor and also from a coaching perspective, it really gives you the chance to sit in there and really quarterback that situation.
Well, I think that's where the real value is.
Right.
And you didn't just come up with that quarterback that situation. That's actually the way that we talk about it with a CEPA designation, is being the quarterback of that process. And if we look at it from the standpoint of, I wouldn't approach you to work with you in your business by saying you really need exit planning needs to be a priority for you. Okay. That may or may not be of value to you. I don't think you're planning on retiring in the near future. No. Right.
No, I'm not.
Right. So if that's not already on your radar,
right,
then it's probably not on your radar. And you may just say, look, I'm not interested in exit planning. The challenge is, on average, you need at least 24 months. Okay. So a lot of times small business owners wait too long and they go, you know what? I am going to retire. I'm going to retire this summer, right, and it's months away. So first of all, it may be a little bit more time than you think. The other thing is, if you're not even considering exit planning right now in terms of transitioning the business, there's so much value in growing it. And so it's really about taking inventory of what the value of your business is today, which that would be even for someone like you who's not retiring anytime soon, you're not selling the practice anytime soon. Wouldn't you love to know how much you could sell it for today?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And one of the ways that we work through this process is to go through the work, to unpack where your intangible capitals are, which is where most of your value is. We can touch on that in a minute. But understanding what your valuation is and then what the scale of value is for your type of business. So we might be able to create a formula that says right now today, given the current revenues, profits, whatever, the various numbers that we want to look at, your industry, you could sell your business of a multiple of somewhere between 3x and 9x. Okay, let's just say as an example. Well, you might be at 4x today. Mm-hmm. Well, your first question would be, if the industry is selling from 3x to 9x and I'm at 4, how do I get to 9?
Yeah, what do I have to do today?
That's right. And so that's where that business planning and business strategy comes in, when we start talking about accelerating the value of your business. Mm-hmm. So understanding, for me to be able to help you as a quarterback of that situation, there's no legal documents necessarily that will help you, but there are some deficits there.
Yeah.
So I'm bouncing around a little bit, but just thinking, kind of going through that thread a little bit more. If I were talking to you about your business and it's on that scale of 3x to 9x and you're at a 4, if you don't have any kind of legal documents in place in terms of who's going to take over your business if one of these 5 Ds, for example, happens to you, well, that creates a lesser valuation.
That's a lesser valuation for someone looking at your business.
That's exactly right.
Let me ask you one question about what are some I know when you go through this bookwork and everything, there's probably some things that jumped out at you that were a surprise. Do you maybe touch on something like that?
Yeah. So, it kind of goes in line with some of our conversation up to this point. I was surprised that, first of all, and I think this is a critical kind of piece of data, 75% of business owners regret selling their business 12 months later. Now, initially, I would not have expected that.
Right.
Now, you and I have been with business owners who've sold their business, and I'm sure you can think of one or two that it didn't quite go the way they wanted it to go.
Certainly.
They've been, putting in 60, 80, 100 hours a week for the last 20 plus years, and all of a sudden in one day, they're done.
Yeah, light switch goes out.
Yeah, and now where do they find value in their lives, and what do they do next? And they're kind of at home, and they used to get out of the house and go to work every day, and now they're sitting there staring at their wife across the table with a cup of coffee, and nobody's real thrilled about that, and they hadn't planned for it.
Yeah.
And so having some of those conversations about really what life after business looks like, there's a way we approach it with a readiness score. So you have a business readiness score, which kind of evaluates where you are on that scale of value I talked about earlier. But you also have a personal readiness score and a personal financial readiness score. And those things really evaluate, what are your goals? If you were to sell the business for X amount of dollars, does that accomplish financially the things you want to do? And then outside of financials, personally, where do you want to spend your time?
Right.
And have we qualified those things enough to know that you've got grandkids over here and you've got a beach house over there, and how are you going to spend your time? Kind of walking through that process. All of that was kind of a big surprise for me.
I was at a conference recently, and what surprised me is that not just from a business owner perspective, but from an individual perspective, be it business owner or someone that is not a business owner, one of the top 5 things that individuals are worried about after the age of 65 is retirement.
Yeah.
That is one of their biggest, it ranks up there with loss of spouse.
That's interesting.
So it's for individuals as well that you, retirement is not all blue skies and red roses the day after you do it.
Right.
Much like for a business owner that sells their business. That's critical. That's good.
I think
good
one of
info.
the other surprises for me was this concept of intangible capitals. And it'll make sense to you because it's some of the work that we do, but in the CEPA world, we refer to them as the 4 C's of intangible capitals. Mm-hmm. And it's structural capital, social capital, human capital, and customer capital.
Okay.
And in any business, 80% of the value, when we talk about the value of your business on that scale, 80% of the value is within those 4 pieces. Okay, so you have your human capital or the people you have working with you.
Right.
You know, what are their strengths and weaknesses? That's really important to know. Do you have the right people in the right places in your business? Your social capital deals with the culture of your business. Is it an attractive culture? Are the people happy that they're there? Do you provide a good service? Your customer capital really deals with, are you maybe overweighted in you have one customer that's 80 or 90% of your revenue? Like, that's a problem, right?
Yeah, that is.
So you need to be able to evaluate, what does your customer capital look like? Because if it's overweighted or too heavy with one particular customer, as you know, that wouldn't necessarily be too great. And then the other piece is the structural capital. And I think this is where the structural capital is kind of where you would get into. Structural and human capital would be where you would get into business coaching and business consulting. So, for example, it deals with processes and systems that you have in place. So, as you know, you've got a small business and they don't have a payroll service, for example. Maybe they have an accountant or even a bookkeeper who does all their payroll stuff, and it's a one-man shop, and they do payroll and they do all the accounting and the bookkeeping, and it's all on like some kind of an Excel spreadsheet, and the business owner doesn't really know, but they've been working with that person for the last 15 or 20 years and everything's going fine. Was a potential buyer of that business, that's not very attractive to me, because I've got to go in there and try to decipher what all's been happening over the last few years and how do I get to the next step.
Right.
But if you can put in some of that structural pieces of processes and systems and maybe have something that's a little more streamlined or a little more turnkey, that really can slide that valuation number up a lot.
Correct.
So that was a big surprise for me, was knowing those 4 C's can really impact the value of the business.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. That's things that people don't often think of. How do you think that receiving this designation is really going to position you slightly different? I know that we're trying to get the word out, certainly, but how do you think that could position you as a leader in helping business owners with their long-term goals?
Well, I think just being able to walk people through this same process that we're talking a little bit about today, barely scratching the surface on it, right? I think for our office at Southeast Retirement Planners to have someone in-house, whether they work with me already directly or they're one of your clients or they're one of Matt or Kelly's clients, either way, I think to be able to have somebody that we can bring in as a resource from Southeast Retirement Planners to help clients that are business owners understand where their value is and really then help them implement accelerating that value. I think that's a critical, I guess, tool in our toolbox.
Right.
And so hopefully that'll be something that we can bring to our folks here soon.
Right. I think certainly it will as we encounter more and more people. I think that what we're finding is, as Hickory, where we're located, but across the Southeast as it is in our name and across the country, with things that are moving within our tax framework as we have an aging population. Wouldn't you agree that this is, we're probably on the cusp of this, of individuals wanting to give more time and thought to exiting their businesses? Would you say so?
All right. So some of the data on, you hear it all the time on boomers.
Right.
And the influx, well, a lot of those people are business owners.
Correct.
And there's a lot of small businesses that are going through these transitions or approaching these periods of transition. And I think, for some people, for some business owners, they look at it as, some might look at it as just a transaction, and some might look at it as a death sentence, and they're just going to keep working until they can't work anymore.
Right.
The end. And then you can sell the assets off later. That, neither of those things are a good way to approach it, you know? And so if we can get in front of business owners and let them know that there's a way to value it, there's a way to accelerate that value, and that we can be a resource in that and really help connect them and work with their attorneys, work with their accountants, we can connect them with some business coaches and some other resources like that that can really help accelerate that value and make a transition a possible thing for them. So it's not a requirement. If any of your clients or any of the folks that we work with wanted to come in and go through this process, it's not a requirement that you sell the business.
Right.
What'll happen is the business will become more valuable.
Right.
And so that's a real benefit. Now you might decide to stick around for a while longer,
Right.
and that's great.
Right. Well, you've just covered that. That's how I think how you see the vision and our vision of how this designation and you being able to help us as our team at Southeast Retirement Planners. I think that's great. And I think that's critical with an aging population, an aging client base, if you will. And let me and you just touched on this as well, but how is the best way for individuals to learn more about this designation, how you can assist? I know we're doing this podcast today.
Yeah.
But what else?
Yeah, I think just get in touch with your advisor at Southeast Retirement Planners.
Right.
Give me a call, talk to Ryan or Les or Matt or Kelly or whoever at our office that you work with. Let us know that it's something you want to look into if you're a business owner.
Okay.
And I think it's, when you mentioned something a minute ago, Ryan, I think is so important about being a business owner, working on your business, not just in your business. Yeah. And so for a lot of people that I've been able to work with over the past few years, when that becomes a priority and it doesn't have, there's so many things that happen in our day-to-day work that we don't have enough time to work on our business as much as we'd like. We work in it, but not on it as much as we'd like. But when you can commit to carving out time to working on your business, this is a great place to start. So now you know that there's a formula, there's a process and a strategy that can really help accelerate that value. And I think the one other thing that you mentioned a minute ago, we didn't really get into too much, but the family dynamics can be a real messy part of the equation for a lot of people. And so knowing that we have some experience in helping people deal with that, and it may be that the business owner has a son or daughter that may want to get into the business one day or probably doesn't want to get into the business one day, but yet they still maintain that they want that son or daughter to be the beneficiary of that value.
Right.
So maybe you have one child that wants to take over the business and another one doesn't. So how do you kind of start talking through equitable compensation or equitable distribution and things like that when you have someone that runs the business and someone that maybe doesn't? And so there's all kinds of nuance there that I think could help business owners gain a little clarity.
Right. Okay. So we've covered a lot of topics, and as we wrap up today, what have we missed out on anything that you think is just abundantly important for someone listening today?
We've touched on a lot today, so I guess the
5 Ds, the 4 Cs.
Right. So, any good program has a lot of acronyms, right?
Oh, yeah.
Of course. But I think the biggest takeaway is the idea that it's not exit planning, it's business planning. And to have some expertise and some resources in that area for any business owner. And frankly, if you just are a high-level executive in a business or a high-level operator in a business, then some of these same things would still apply. Some of these same rules and some of these same strategies would still benefit. So I think that's the key. Even though it's a CEPA, is Certified Exit Planning Advisor, I think for people to know that it's not just exit planning, it's business planning, and that's where it can provide the most value.
Yeah, sometimes exits last as long as you said, minimum 24 months usually.
Sure.
To do it the right way, I think. Obviously, some do it sooner based off circumstances, but some doing the right way could be 5+ years.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it could be something, Ryan, that you start going down this path of working on your business. So you get valuations done, you start implementing. Part of the strategy is how do we follow up and how do we maintain a trajectory? So that's something we would do as a quarterback of that situation. But it really, it doesn't mean that you have to sell the business. It doesn't mean you have to transition. It just means you can. And so when you can do that on your terms, avoiding those 5 Ds that are so destructive, certainly to a business. But if you can decide you want to exit on your terms, you'd be surprised at what doors that will open up for you going forward. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, that'd be great. And as we said when earlier, working on the business, as we leave it, when you decide maybe that's something for those listening, that's business owners, that this might be what they need or something they can grasp a hold of if they know they need to work a little bit more on their business and they get caught up in their business, that this could be something that they could maybe hold themselves accountable to in working through this. So, well, I've enjoyed our conversation today. I think that we're certainly going to, you're going to put out this content, but then you're also going to do some other short videos, correct?
Yeah, we'll continue to put out some more content about exit planning and the value of that for businesses. And I'll probably go into some detail and have some little snippets of some of these areas that we've touched on. But just knowing that there is a strategy, there is a process that you can go through that can really make a difference for those of you who are business owners. I think that's critically important. Right. Yep.
Well, we appreciate your time today. This is a great conversation and something I think that'll help a number of individuals. So make sure that, as always, the recordings or our previous episodes can be found at our website, scretirementplanners.com. And also we have a YouTube library, YouTube channel, as well as
like,
on Spotify.
Subscribe, click on it, all that stuff.
All that
really helps us for sure. People don't know that, but liking, thumbs up, subscribing, that makes a big difference in terms of how we can get our information out there. So it really matters.
That's correct. So you can, if this is something that would assist you right now, you can find your way to Bob through our website or certainly by calling our office on the screen in front of you. So thank you for your time today, and we'll be back in touch here on the Southeast Retirement Planners podcast.
Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor. Member of FINRA, SIPC. Southeast Retirement Planners is not affiliated with LPL Financial or registered as a broker-dealer or investment advisor.